Right, hello everybody, welcome to tonight's stream. We're going to have a look at some of our basic workflows and things like that today. I've got a few things to flick through, a few bits and bobs to play with, and some interesting pieces to go through. Get that a little closer. Right, so hopefully that will be recording nicely. Again, new bit of kit tonight, so hopefully all good. Right, so I'm going to start off with these lovely castle scenes. Again, we're just finishing off something that we started during the day today. Keep an eye on sound just to make sure it's going through nicely. So that's been sandwiched already. Good. So, very simply, what we do when we turn in terms of sandwich taping is it's to keep out dust and particles and things like that. There are some picture framers out there that don't like doing any form of sandwich taping, but the reason why we do it is to obviously keep the dust out and try and prevent anything like what I call thunderbugs from getting in, which are the little insects that you get with thunderbugs that you can get in. So if you have a look, this one isn't particularly brilliant, but you can see there's a little thunderbug in there, little insect that crawl in. So the nature of thunderbugs is they burrow their way in, they get inside, and then obviously they pass away, and passing away inside of a piece means that all of their bodily fluids break down and cause a lovely big yellow splodge, which isn't particularly useful. Essentially all the acid inside the body breaks down, and that can leave a stain on your image. So, there we go. So these are some lovely castle scenes. I'm not entirely sure where they're from, but someone's been off on their travels nicely, which is good. Very simply, with this, we've obviously talked to the customer about their home. So the usual questions about their home is whether they have a traditional environment or a modern environment. And the reason why we ask that one initially, if you have a look, this is a deeper, darker cream. Deeper, darker creams obviously go better in more traditional environments. Lighter, more modern colours, you know, whites and ultra whites and pale ivories go better in more modern, contemporary environments. The other thing we've done there, you've probably noticed there's a nice double mount. That double mount in there is giving it an extra bit of pizzazz, just making it that little bit more special. So there's a couple of functions really. The main function is obviously to really enhance the display. What we've done, what we usually do with these is pick out one of the main colours. As you can see, the rooftops are these lovely sort of terracotta-y brown colour, and again we've used these mounts here to make them pop. Obviously, it gives it an extra frame as well, sort of makes it a bit more, you know, a bit bolder, makes it pop out a little bit more. It also has the added advantage of adding in that little bit of depth. Now that depth is quite useful, especially with plain glass. It allows the lights to bounce in and out a little bit more, and that obviously stops, or well, it makes the glass less visible essentially, because the more lights can bounce in and out of it. We do have other specialist glasses which are really very good for light. Well, actually, there's two different main types that we stock, which is the the anti-reflective, some people are starting to call it, but we still use the old-fashioned term of water white, and that allows in and out 99% of light and is virtually invisible. And so the only sort of major issues and problems we've ever had with it was a reflection from the actual image itself. So someone brought in a very high gloss photograph, and that high gloss photograph reflected the light and wasn't diffused by the ultra modern glass. And because it, the whole point of getting the extra special glass was to reduce reflections, and obviously they were getting reflections off the piece, so it didn't quite work. Never mind. The traditional way of doing it is to use what we call non-reflective glass. It should really be called diffusion glass. What they do essentially is they acid etch one side of it. It used to be two sides of it to make it even worse. And that essentially diffuses the light on the way out, but it takes away some of the focus a little bit from the actual glass, so it's not so brilliant. I'll show you some examples of it a bit later. Well, our backing board here, we're just using a nice 2mm MDF. These are popping out a little bit because the pins here are just essentially too thin for this, and it's an ash profile. Ash being a very beautiful, very hard wood, means that obviously it takes a bit of something in order to get it in there. So those thinner ones there are great for things like very thin pencil frames, but you want something with a little bit more depth. That little 2mm is going to do it great justice. Essentially, it's going to keep it nicely structurally together. So what I'm doing here is I'm just nipping through this 2mm MDF backing board into the structure of the frame on a sort of a shallow 40-degree-ish angle, and that just allows me to nip the board and nip the frame, especially on a much thinner, lighter frame that stops it from bowing as much. And it essentially links it all across. So this is now part of the whole structure, this back. This is one of the problems with a ready-made frame. Obviously, if you're just using a clip over the top and putting some pressure on it, you're not affecting the whole structure. So obviously, when we put things in the frame permanently, getting this structure across is quite useful. So it's nice and sturdy now, essentially. Check that this one's actually been done. It has. It's nicely sandwiched. Also just checking for bits of dust and any spears or anything like that hopefully should be on the front rather than underneath the glass. The amount of times that we have to go back in just because an errant bit of dust is in there is quite painstakingly painful, actually. It's the sheer loss of man hours is being an accountant's nightmare, actually. So just finding all those pins in there, so that's nice and sturdily in there now, so that's not going to move at all. So nice and secure. So with that, I'm just going to finish it off with some K-tape. Just need some K-tape, which is obviously wide enough to take the frame and a couple of centimeters into there. So that's probably wide enough. You could certainly get away with a wider one if you wanted, but you definitely wouldn't want anything thinner. So we use a very good quality K-tape in ours. Essentially, it reduces the chance of it peeling off over time. There are some thinner economy tapes that are out there. I'm just not a fan of using them, to be honest. They're not particularly fun to use. Scalpel. This is just a basic scalpel that you can grab in any craft market anywhere or art shop. This one's a bit of a blunt blade, never mind. As a rule, we tend to use Swan Mortison, I think, so some decent ones. It is Swan Mortison. Anyway, yeah, good quality blade, something that can be changed quite often if you're doing a lot of heavy work. So because this is a bit of a deeper rebate, you can see I'm cutting just on the edges there and then just filling in with my nail. I always like to get my nail in quite heavily in there just to make sure that there's no air bubbles or anything like that. Again, this is a down the road thing, it's not a right now thing. You know, we like to make sure that our frames are nice and pristine for many years to come. We always think of a good quality frame lasting in the right conditions around about 40 to 50 years. So we want it to be perfect for our customer. You know, it's a quality bit of furniture. Use a blunt blade. Just get them out, see if I can have a scalpel somewhere. Trouble with having 3 or 4 of us in here, the tools move, tools get shifted about. Here we go. That one. There we go. So that's the yeah. Trying to figure out whether it says Swan Morton or Swan Moston, but anyway, it's good quality high steel blade. So as you can see, by using a good quality tape, it allows us to get in there and reseal that and get that nice and firmly down and very pretty, essentially. Our customers seem to appreciate, which is nice. Had to do some refit jobs on a number of different things that have come into us over the years, and some have fared better than others. You know, we don't have to do it this way. There are other ways. There's I might do a little show one day on how to do the traditional way of backing, which is a whole paper across the back, which is quite nice, particularly useful on things like ovals. So the plan tonight really is to show you a few little things, catch up on a little bit of a job. Obviously, being November and December, we are pretty darn busy at the moment. So you know, doing these live streams in the evening is quite a good way of catching up on a bit of work. top of all the 1001 admin bits and bobs I've got to do. Really would be useful if the government and the councils and the taxman and the everything else would just let me crack on and be a picture framer, but no, I have to do all this admin, which is always fun. We've had a fairly sort of chilled out day here in the shop today. We've done a few little bits and bobs, some nice sort of balloons next door for different parties and things like that, and taken in a few little orders here and there. But because of the horrific weather today, the rain, etc., we haven't seen a vast number of people. We've seen certainly enough to keep us happy, but we've always got room. So if you are thinking about getting something into us for Christmas, our usual 2-week schedule is up to the 12th already, can you believe? But we will obviously endeavour to get anything done for you pre-Christmas if you want it. Other than that, we always open up in the new year again. Certainly got a large number of Christmas presents and things like that coming in, which is always good. And we'll always congratulate customers getting through that madding crowd of the silly Christmas market that's happening in the middle of Bath. It's an absolute nightmare. The Christmas market. They bus in hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people to come and have a wander around a load of sheds with a lot of tat in it, essentially. Everybody that I speak to from Bath in general dislikes it immensely, but the council must be earning money or something. It'd be nice if the council wouldn't let me have to pay my business rates during that period as well. But there we go. So again, just with the Brazil, I prefer to use this one here, which has got a chisel point on it. You can use a blunt point. Just triple checking the front of the image at the top. We always try and put the D-rings, which I'll grab out in a second, between 1/4 and 1/3 of the way up the frame. Because they're hanging as a pair, I'll do it side by side. I'm just going to put one in, and I'm going to put in a fairly shallow screw. Again, as I mentioned earlier, this is an ash profile, and because it's an ash profile, it's incredibly hard. I'm using a tape measure here, but at home you could always just use a pencil or even a finger if you wanted to, just to get the same distance. So as I mentioned, I'm just going to use some thin screws. These are 10mm screws. So a couple of those and a couple of D-rings should be good. Oh. So these are what we call a D-ring. So in the trade, obviously they're called a D because they're in the shape of a D. So the strongest point with any D-ring is this. That way. So this top D point here, the top of the D. The reason why that is the strongest is essentially as it pulls up, the two bits which are inside here, which aren't actually fully linked, actually lock out within this encasing here, which is obviously tied down with the screw. If you do hang it from the side, that's actually the weakest point because it can slip out and break. So you'll notice on things like very heavy duty mirrors that they'll have what they call a strap hanger. See if I've got one. So a strap hanger. So one of these or something of the like. And they are designed to go into the frame so they're facing vertically upwards, not your D-rings which go towards each other for the string. And they are designed for you to hook over a point directly in the wall. And you'd have one on either side there. So if you're going to hang it portraits, you'd have them pointing upwards like that, and then you'd have one point in the wall there and one point in the wall there. And they'd hook on to the 2 points in the wall directly. Whereas obviously with a standard picture, what we do is put the D-rings on the side, put the string across as I'm about to show you, the knots just to the side there, so you can put a hook, one hook in the wall, so you can go right in the middle. That's nice and solidly into that ash. It's anything deeper in terms of a screw is A, overkill, and B, has the potential to split the wood. I'm just going to use our medium string on this. All of our string is a low stretch nylon cord. It does have a tiny bit of stretch in it, as all things would do, but essentially they call it low stretch so that even though I'm going to get a nice big bit of tension across it over time, that can move up the wall a little bit. It is still better than wire. Wire is a malleable thing, as it's metal, and over time gravity can snap it. So we prefer to use nylon, which is obviously not going to degrade over time. So I'm just going to do a reef knot. It's the figure of 8 knot, so it's that nice right over left, left over right one. Just make sure that it's got no movement in it. And then, as you can see, instead of putting it bang in the middle there, I'm putting it slightly to the side so that you can put your hook directly on it. And then just finishing it off with a couple of fisherman's loops. So I do a double fisherman's loop, so other people do it differently to me. I do it this way as I think it's the prettiest. That's personal preference. The important thing really is just to tie it off to stop it from unraveling and getting towards that reef knot. So you're just basically giving it a nice bit of protection. So there we go, that's that one finished. Okay, so that's all ready to go. We'll give it one sort of final inspection, one good old scrub. Get rid of any fingerprints, any marks on the front. And we're just obviously going to check the frame, all the different corners. So as you can see, nicely joined. The wax is all nicely filled in. So this particular moulding here, we've used a dark oak stain on it and a dark oak wax just to lift the grain out again. So it'll start off life like that, so a beautiful ash profile. And that beautiful ash profile is then sanded back, and then obviously we apply a water-based stain to it. Let that dry, and then obviously seal it all in with a nice wax, and that should last a very long time. So right over left, left over right. Nice bit of tension on it. Triple check it's not a granny knot. There we go. And then a couple of loops. Finish it off. I'm just cutting off the excess. Some people use a lighter to burn it off, but that's not really necessary. Couple of fingerprints on there. It's just there. So that's just a basic alcohol window cleaner, if you like, low alcohol. Sorry, high alcohol even. Evaporates off nicely. Takes any smears and grease and things like that off, as well as helps remove the dust and the smears. Anyway, so yeah, all ready to go. So someone's going to have a lovely pair of beautiful medieval style scenes in their home in a sort of nice traditional cream with some sepia browns to pick up on the roof, and then obviously finished off with a lovely dark oak frame into an ash profile, which has got the lovely natural grain, picks up really nicely on the sketch patterns. So hopefully they're pleased with it. Anyway, I think that was a very good choice by the customer. So I think that's going to look really nice in their house for many years to come. So the next one to show you is one that has been plaguing me for weeks, and that is this lovely set of medals here, which are awaiting some of that fantastic glass which I talked about earlier. Some of this it's a museum grade glass, so it has that water white glass that I talked about earlier. But it also has 99% UV protection from it as well. It's a stunning glass. It's virtually invisible, apart from on certain angles. It comes from the spectacle industry, the people who manufacture your glasses, and it basically has a special, well, two special films on it. One which is virtually invisible, so it allows in and out 99% of light. So it has the anti-reflective properties, as well as the function of blocking out 99% of UV light. So hopefully this one's coming to us in one piece. This one's been plaguing us a little bit because the first one we got through was scratched. The second one had a bubble. So did the third piece have a bubble. So obviously if we're charging the customer a decent price for it, because it's a good bit of glass and it's an expensive bit of glass, then the customer is not going to be happy if we have any bubbles in it. Anyway, that's it. So we've got some fingers crossed for me today that we can finally get this, and then the customers can finally have their medals. Sure, they'll be very happy with it in the end, but it's been a bit of an epic. So just to avoid me getting some finger marks on it, I'm just going to grab some gloves. Just your basic gloves, just to stop any grease or marks coming off my hand. You should always wash your hands before touching any form of artwork anyway, but grease and things like that has the ability to get in there nicely. So I'm worrying bits of glass chipping on there, but we'll have a look at that. Not chipped. But anyway, it's got a special side. As you can see, there's a sticker left on there just to explain to people where it is. So with that, we've got some specialist glass cleaner as well. Nice clean cloth to go with it. Now this special stuff here is extra high evaporation, because essentially we don't want to rub too hard. We're removing any of the laminate. A good long time ago, we did have one employee of ours that decided to really scrub it, and scrubbed through and took out some of the laminate. So this sticker I'm going to leave on just primarily because it goes on the front, and I'll take it off after it's framed and then re-clean it essentially. But it's fairly important from the UV protection point of view that I know which way up the glass wants to be. But I want to clean the glass here so that I can essentially check the glass over fully. I'll just take it to the edge of the table. That just allows me to look down and see if there are any smears. One little smear. This is that's all nicely cleaned now. So so we're just going to basically put it around this this lovely medal set here. Annoyingly, you probably can't catch it, but that's where the bubble is from the first piece. Been plaguing us a little bit. Obviously, in order for me to clean this properly, I'm going to have to get the air gun out. The air gun can be a little bit noisy. Checking all the metals are in the right place. So I'm just going to sandwich off one side of it, and then I'll get the air gun in there, and that will allow me to get any of that dust out. Also, we've used this suede mountboard on this, and because it's a suede mountboard, it has a tendency to get a fair bit of dust in it. So I'll use some sellotape in a minute and show you, excuse me, and show you an easy trick just to clean up some suede. It's difficult enough at the best of times trying to find the end of some sellotape. But when you've got gloves on, it's even more difficult. I hate to think what doctors have to do in a medical emergency, trying to get gloves and tape off. Right, so let's get the air gun out. This is going to be the noisy bits. So, I'm just blowing away from the metals because I don't want them to flap about, and I'll do it in a circular motion because that obviously helps with suede. Move those out of the way so you can see a little bit better. So there are a number of people. We'll wait for that compressor to get out of the way. Probably can't hear me over the top of it. It's a noisy old thing. You can get silent compressors, but this one is an oil-free one. If you put synth oil in it, then potentially it can come out the other end of the air gun and spray onto your image, which is, you know, you get condensation and oil come out onto an image, which isn't brilliant. So we much prefer to have a noisy bit of kit, which we have to talk over, than having to deal with something spraying onto the customer's artwork. Right, that little hiatus gave me a chance to have a good swig. So as I mentioned during it, you probably didn't hear, I'll just say it again. So we use an oil-free compressor in order to stop anything coming out of the end of the air gun and spraying onto the image. You can get silent ones, but they are oil based, so they'll have synth oil or something like that inside of it, and they have this tendency to have water and synth oil get inside and get pumped out, and obviously spraying that onto someone's image is never a brilliant idea. So it's a bit noisier, but it's certainly more a more preferable happenstance than getting something sprayed on there. So this is the bit where I get really, really grumpy. There's another bubble. There's another bubble. Can you believe it? just going to bring this closer. You can see. So move that up and down so you might be able to. Is that too hard? Disconnect everything. Hope it doesn't make me restart OBS. Let's see if it will come up. Right. So I don't know if you can see that. I'll move it about a little bit. If not, I'll make a little video another time. Jesus. Glad I didn't put the family friendly tag on because I really want to get a bit grumpy about that. All right. All right, let's put a bit of a damp squid on everything. Life, eh? So that's 4 pieces now that we've been through. So 4 pieces from the same manufacturer. 1 came scratched, 3 have got bubbles in it. The first one we didn't check for bubbles because it had scratches on it. But that's ridiculous. Really is ridiculous. Yep, nothing on my table. Yep, nothing in there. It's done in manufacture. Right, so basically tomorrow I'm going to have to make an emergency phone call to another supplier of ours and hope to God that they can get it to us quickly. That customer has now been waiting for weeks. And, you know, quite rightly they brought something into us. We've told them it's going to be 2 weeks and it's been a bit of a nightmare. Muppets. Probably not the supplier actually, it's probably the manufacturer. I don't know. I don't know how it's done at their end. I don't know how it's done in the manufacturing end. But essentially we basically won't be using that supplier from now on. There is another supplier. So it's a pity really because all the other products are pretty good from them. So we'll continue with the other products. We just won't ever stock that from them again. It's this is one of the problems with, you know, people guaranteeing you things. They're guaranteeing you quality of items. They're guaranteeing you that they can get you something in pristine. To be fair to the supplier, they've sent it through the post twice. They've sent it on their van twice to us, and the piece has got to us safely. It's just that either in the cutting of it or in the manufacture of it, it's been chipped, it's been bubbled, and ultimately this customer has been waiting for weeks and weeks, and we're getting annoyed because that's our 4th piece of glass. So I don't know. Yeah, grumpy. Right. Let's move on to Gingy. So you will have seen Gingy in live streams previously. We've got a little bit further with him now that we've essentially got his mount boards up and ready. So Gingy's going to get his clothes on. Seems to be a bit of a theme with dark mounts at the moment. We've obviously used some nice dark mounts on the medieval prints, and then obviously we've got a nice dark theme on Gingy. So here he is in all his glory. So Gingy there, having a nice bite out of his missus. I'm going to call it his missus. I'm a bit of a romantic like that. So very briefly, we mentioned the difference between the mountboards. Oddly enough, they've used a really good quality base mount. So if you see here, the base mount, nice white core, and then the one above it is a cream core. That cream core is probably going to deteriorate over time. So we can actually use this baseboard nicely. We're going to strip out this extra thick beveling here, and then put a double mount over the top. We've redone this baseboard so we can reattach that as well. So let's put Gingy safely to the side for the time being. Right. Right, there we go. So Gingy. So a little bit later on, I'll show you how we attach the image. There's a few debates on how you attach the mount. We will use glue as a base, but we will make sure that it doesn't go anywhere near the image. And that's essentially to get a nice solid feel to it. As you just saw there, I cut off some tape. It's a perfectly reasonable way of doing it. It's just an awful lot more fiddly. Anyway, so what we're going to basically do then is replicate this base on there, and then put this nice double mount over the top. Obviously I need to attach the double mounts in the right place. The supplier, whoever did that, whoever did the original, didn't add any extra to the base. And if you don't add extra to the base, it doesn't make it sit well on the wall, so we've added a little extra. So this will be about 5 or 6 mil bigger in that direction. Anyway, seems to fit quite nicely. Just try and take off those chevrons nicely. So the easiest way of doing that is to chop up the old one, essentially. I'm just going to cut this down into chevrons. If I do go through a little bit, it's under the underside, so it doesn't really matter. It's not going to show through. Probably want to take these gloves off, so you know they're only sort of good if you are handling things. So as you can see, I'm just peeling away from it. This is always useful if you are going to be doing this with anything. The reason why it's useful to do it this way is that if you do peel the other way, you've got a chance of ripping forward into it. So it's always best to try and peel back in a way. So don't forget that Mountboard is made up of many layers, so You know, it's quite easy to take a couple of ply off at a time. Makes it a little bit easier to manipulate things when you get a little bit closer to them. So what I'm really paying more attention to is this front edge initially, making sure that that's nice and pristine, and then I'll worry about the back end and prettying that up and making it flatter. Essentially, if I can keep it all nicely in shape, that's going to be easier for me to put back down later. Now, you might want to, ask the question as to what's the actual point in doing this. The primary point is, as I mentioned earlier, is that cream core. So potential of the acid from that leaching through over time and damaging your image. So this is the one that's actually touching the image. Because it's the one that's touching the image, it's the most important one to make sure that we get right. Customer's original spec was for us to make it look like her others, which we have done previously with a double mount. So obviously that's the reason why we took the top layer off. That was the easy bit. We then had to very carefully take the image off the mount itself, because someone had decided to double-sided sticky tape the image to it, which is not the cleverest of ideas. Can actually damage it over time. So this looks like these bits might fall off a little bit, so I'm just going to number them so I know where they're going to be. So I know which side they go with. It always makes it a little bit easier. So if you're wondering why I'm tidying up all the edges and bits and bobs like that, essentially, the flatter I can get it, the better the next bond is going to be. Obviously, even though it's sort of a couple of ply can raise it up a little bit. We're relying on the previous bond to hold it in position. So the plan of action really with this is to re-glue this to our new undermount and then attach it to the Gingy. Not the other way around. It just means that if we do, by happenstance, make a mistake on the mount, or the glue gets overspilled or anything, it's nowhere near the actual image. One of the most important priorities is making sure that the image itself is protected at all times. Little fiddly bit. So I'm going to try and leave this top paper on as it's only a few hundred micron. Not going to really affect anything, but it's the thicker core I'm trying to remove. Gives me a rough indication of where it's going to go. It's great. So just very briefly, as mentioned, we do add a little extra to the base, so we always try and figure out which is the actual base. I just put a little X on it, and obviously put all the different numbers on it if you prefer. Alright, because this is in a multitude of different parts, we'll put it together bit by bit. This isn't going to be completed by tonight for any shape of length. You can use a few bits of masking tape actually to make sure it's all held together nicely. Here we go. We use a decent Tessa tape. So I obviously know the aperture of the upper mount, so I'm well aware of where I need to put this, so it's not going to be visible. I will probably remove this before I add the top layer of mount on it anyway. This back bit is less important. It's obviously just a structural thing. The front one might be visible, so therefore it's fairly important. There's a couple of ways of getting the depth into a frame with some lovely mounts like this. The way they've done it here is perfectly sound. It's a good quality foam, which is nice and inert. And they've used what I hope is a decent quality paper over the top. There's a few minor issues with that paper not being fully stuck down. You might be able to see that in there. But not a lot I can do about that unless I inject it, which I'm not prepared to do because I don't want a hole in the image, in the surface of the mount even. And the last one here. We'll flip it over and do the other side as well. So it seems a bit painstaking, but it's always best to do these things once and just to make sure that it's all good. Nothing more infuriating than having to go back into something to fix it. So always best to triple check it. Even if you know what you're doing, always good to triple check. That last one. Make that nice and steady. Good. So essentially we've got two options here. One, we can use PVA glue, or two, we can use a good quality double-sided. They've used PVA, so I think that's a good idea. Just because there's a couple of different layers of paper on there. Putting that PVA on is going to allow a decent sort of spread. But they've used some sort of super glue or possibly Gorilla Glue or something like that. But we'll just use a good quality PVA and put it on top. So just with a pencil, I'm just going to mark out a rough sort of area where I want to put the PVA on the mount board, and then we'll place this on top. That's all there. So yeah, just gives me a couple of indications. Now we're just going to use some basic glue. You can get special paper glues and wood glues, but this is a really good tough bond. Yeah. I'm not going to use a tremendous amount, just enough to get that nice little bond down. Not enough to squirt out the side. If it does squirt out the side, not the end of the world, because we can obviously remake it. And don't forget, we're not going anywhere near gingy tonight with this glue. It's going to stay well away from it. This is going to dry overnight. We will attach the other two images and things like that as well. So, right, let's go. The other little luxury of PVA is that because it's a liquid, it's got a little bit of wiggle in it. That nice little bit of wiggle is quite useful when you're laying things down. It means you can maneuver it a little bit. It doesn't dry instantaneously or doesn't grab instantaneously like a good quality mount board would do. So I'm just going to do this visually initially, and then I'll triple check with our digital kit. Nature of this is that obviously we are dealing with our squares as opposed to whoever originally did this square, so we don't always like to do this this way around, but not having seen not having done one of these paper wraps and not having any of this paper wrapped product myself for foam, it's something I've had to take out for the customer. So I'm just going to put some weights over the top of it now, just to let it dry. While it's drying off, we'll check it digitally, make sure it's all in the right place. If you're wondering why I'm rubbing these on there, it's to make sure there's no dust on the bottom of it. Obviously, if there's anything on the bottom of it, it could transfer onto the image or onto the mouse. So, it's always worthwhile having pots of bits and bobs about. Allows you to get some weight. don't think we've actually done the frame for Ginger yet, so it would be easier to use the glass as well. Anyway, we shall let that dry. So that'll dry for a little bit, and obviously a bond. It's going to take about 5–10 minutes. So what we'll do with Ginger a little bit later is put it back onto this, either onto this or a new backing board. Well, no, we'll put it on a new backing board because I wasn't confident with the other mounts on it. So put it on a brand new mount board on the backing and make sure it's all going to be nice and pristinely leaving here. What we basically will use is water reversible archival tape. Which is this stuff here. It's just a nice simple paper tape. It's got archival glue on it, so it is removable later. We do have other specialist tapes. I think it's called Hayaku tape, which is a sort of a yellowy looking tape. Here we go. Hayaku tape, and that's sort of really good, especially on very thin pieces of rice paper or something like that. If you're doing a surface mount or anything that could possibly show through, you should never put tape where it can show, but sometimes you don't have any choice if you're doing a tape tear repair or something like that. And then obviously we've got the traditional self-adhesive pH neutral tape, which is pretty much the same. It's a little bit fiddlier. In fact, you can see what we're going to do later, which is that lovely T hinge on there. I think I'm going to have a quick. Anyway, that should be a little bit better now. Just clear the table a little bit. While this is drying underneath, I'm just going to do a bit of measuring. This is it's 1 or 2 pieces came in today, which just need measuring up. Microphone under some paper for some reason. So bear with me a sec. I'm just measuring this to give the information to the picture framer. I always measure from the 10 point on the tape measure because it's this can move by a couple of mil. Just makes it a little bit more accurate. Measure twice, cut once. Put that one safely away now. So while I've got that PVA out, I'm going to show you what we're going to do for next week's project. This is my little lad Lucas, and he was given a lovely workbook by his first ever well, teacher, I suppose, nursery worker, Roxy. It's fantastic. It's got lovely loads and loads and loads of little pictures in it for from his younger years. He's 5 years old now. This is from sort of 1 to 2 years. Well, actually 6 months to 2 years old, actually. And nursery found it the other day and gave it to us. And what I'm going to do is cheekily, I'm going to put it into a frame and give it to the missus for Christmas. Lovely. Obviously, someone else has used double-sided sticky tape on the back here. This is the reason why double-sided sticky tape isn't the best idea in the world, is because over time it dries. And so I'll remind you that my boy is only 5 years old, and so within what, so 3-4 years, this tape has dried off and fallen off as easily as that. May not be in the best quality double-sided tape in the world. If you do have a good bit of double-sided tape, then it should last a very long time. But it does dry out. It's the reason why you should never attach any image with double-sided tape or masking tape or sellotape if you want to keep it in there permanently. I'll just throw that bit of card or whatever. All I'm basically going to do is PVA this nicely back in place with a flathead screwdriver. Nice dollop of glue on the end. In there. Family life, eh? Always walking past outside the shop with a group of friends, screaming their head off. Family group even. So by putting little blobs on the back, that allows me just to maneuver this a little bit, make sure it's all in a good place. So I'll just maneuver it, wiggle down the PVA so it attaches nicely. Fiddle with that backing ribbon at a later stage. They're all spaced out nicely, and then obviously I'll get some weights on it overnight just to make sure it glues down nicely. I'm going to put this next to the microphone, so there might be a bit of crashing and walloping. Okay. Going to check the tackiness of the gingy in just a second. Okay. That seems to have stuck down quite nicely. So the next task then is to get this other mount up and running. So I'm now going to use a good quality double-sided tape to attach these two mounts together, and then we'll use PVA again to attach this to the other one. So I haven't quite marked down the right end with that. So we know that that's one. So again, we're going to be using conservation grade mount on all of this, so it's all going to be have that nice white inside step here for at least 25 years. It's all going to be, it's good quality stuff essentially. Had all the acid removed from it before manufacture, so it's a nice acid neutral product. It's finger lift tape, so I need my fingers. Take those off. So we've got a 5mm undermount all the way here, so I'll just do it about a centimetre away. Means you get a nice clean edge with no tape visible. The other beauty about the double-sided tape that we're using, or the finger lift tape that we're using, is it's double-sided, therefore there's a couple of mil in terms of a gap as well. So I'll put it on all four sides. I've overlapped it, as you can see. That just means that there's a nice clean area to grab all round. Just folding it back on these edges here, so that remember I said with the PVA you can get that because of the liquid nature of it, you can get a little bit of wiggle on it and that nice little bit of give. If you were to take all this down and plonk it straight down, you've got pretty much one chance before changing it, but by leaving the finger lift tape there, there's a little bit of lift from the fold, and I can check it all visually, make sure I'm happy with it before I press it down, and I can just peel out the tape from underneath it. So very simply peel that out. He says, yeah. Always checking there's no bowing as we go around. There we go. Stuck nicely. That one. So again, just checking that little X underneath and this little X over the top. Just maneuver it all into the right place and triple check we're happy with it. Something's slightly off in the cut here, which is causing it to be a millimetre or two out, which is frustrating, but it might actually clamp down when we put weight over the top of it. Quite annoying in nature, but that'll be fine. Let's deviate that again. You notice I'm using another bit of card here just to make a start, to make sure it doesn't blob. Yeah, and I'm holding the nozzle very close to the piece of paper and essentially scraping through it. That just stops it again from blobbing. Because obviously any forms of blobs or anything like that, they can potentially seep through. Having gone through all the work we've gone through, we don't want to have to start again and redo it all again. So checking that X again. Down. Just gonna use our eyes. Now that we've used our eyes, we'll get a few measuring things. So every movement I make in one corner, I'm going back and making it again in a different corner. It's looking good. So again, we'll get the weights back on it, and that can be then drying overnight. So what we'll do then is on Friday night we'll come back and we'll have a look at Gingy and putting Gingy into fully into his frame, so you can see the fully finished product. But I think it's going to be a really quite nice look. So on Friday you'll get to see us de-hinge Gingy and obviously fully fit it and put it in the frame. Hopefully I would have solved the glass issue by then as well. Other than that, if you've got any questions, please feel free to email us or contact us at any of the social media forums. If you wanted to, you can find us at www.framecraftonline.com or on Facebook, Instagram, etc. Please do ask me any questions. Thank you.